When I first offered up this topic as a as a possible presentation, I didn't quite put into mind that I would only have 20 minutes to talk. So so it took me a long time to get this down. Let's see. So first of all, you might know me as Birdman Joe. I've been doing a lot of bird work in the Bahamas for the last 25 years or so, but I am more than birds. In fact, my career has been mostly in entrepreneurship. I've started a number of companies and have done pretty well in helping larger entities and governments and big companies reduce their environmental footprint. And so now I'm retired. I retired to the life of the academy, where I am a professor of social entrepreneurship. Now, people ask me all the time, well, what's social entrepreneurship? What is that? That sounds crazy. Well, I kind of look at it like this. My kids don't like broccoli, right? And so what I did was I started putting cheese on the broccoli and calling it cheesy trees. And guess what? They eat the broccoli. Well, I found that scientists don't really like business. So I put a little cheese on it, and we call it social entrepreneurship, and guess what? You guys eat it up. So I'm going to start here by letting you know that I am biased. I believe steadfastly in the power of enterprise. I believe that enterprise and business and entrepreneurship are the most efficient ways to bring goods and services to a needful, wantful society. And I think that business writ large, certainly in the last 10 years, it's always had a bad name. And some of that's earned. I don't disagree with that. But some of it's not really deserved. And I think that we vilify business, we vilify entrepreneurship, we vilify this as opposed to really understanding the reasons why business has failed us and why, in fact, brought us to the Anthropocene. I'm going to hijack that term. So I don't believe it's a bad thing. I think that business, by and large, is a good thing, but sometimes the bad that they do is not intentional, rather born out of ignorance from either the consumer or the companies or both. So if we look at an example here, and unfortunately that white may not show up on the screen, and for that I am sorry. I will read it to you. The first step in procuring oil is we have to drill and we have to explore, and then it goes to refinement and storage. And it gets delivered at a gas station where you pay for it and it goes in your car. And so that dollar symbol is where we pay for it, right? And that's the cost of gasoline. We know what the cost of gasoline is. It's right there. I pay it, put it in my car. Is that the real cost of gasoline? Of course, we're going to say, no, Joe, that's not the real cost of gasoline. We can see here is a picture of the Niger Delta. You see that's not mud, that's oil exploration. That's from the refinement process. That's a flame off or where they burn excess oil and pollute the air. And here's at the gas station, you have storage tanks, and those storage tanks leak, and they get into the groundwater. They affect your health. They affect my health. They affect the health of fishes. They affect our entire ecosystem. And that car that we drive, of course, that has cost too. That adds carbon to our atmosphere. And you all know this, right? But perhaps some of you don't know the term for this. This is an externality. These are costs that are certainly within the system, but they're not borne by the consumer, not borne by the person who's paying for it, right? So who does pay for these externalities? Who pays for that? Is it us? Do you pay for it? Do you pay for that? Do you pay for that oil spill? Do you pay for the asthma that a kid gets because they live in an area that's very polluted? Do we pay right now for the sea level rise? Do we pay for that? Who's paying for it? It's the environment. It's the nature. These things that are external to the process, external to it, are bearing the cost of business. Okay? And so what we need to start thinking about is how do we impact the direct, the non-direct costs and affect change in business? So, I mean, this is something I'll go over rather quickly, but these are mechanisms that we could use, and we have used as policy mechanisms, and we can continue to use, but we need to be better at figuring out how we pay for these externalities. You know, we have to understand the hard dollar cost of externalities. In the study that the Nature Conservancy undertook, it's a pretty cool project, because what we're getting at is understanding the costs and the benefits. But once we understand that, we can build the costs into the supply chain. So now that we can build those costs into, guess what? Sure, that's going to raise the cost of the goods or services you're buying, but it's going to leave room for the market to innovate. Okay, so think about that. What it's going to do is it raises the cost, and that hurts, right? It hurts a little, but what it's going to do is it's going to give us an opportunity to innovate without those costs in there. That's important. That's a market force. Now, it needs to be, here's the thing. We're not talking Ayn Rand, total free market capitalism. There needs to be a taxation. We need to pay for those costs, okay? And that will raise the cost of those goods or services and allow people or entities or ideas to come into the market that might not have those same costs. So we know, incidentally, and this is really cool, people like you will impose a self-tax of up to 20% to buy goods and services that don't have externalities. So what does that mean? I call it the environmental premium. If you understand what the externalities are, and you have a product like that sitting next to a shelf that does not have those same externalities, you'll pay 20% more, even if the government doesn't tell you to. If that is $10 for the bad product, you'll pay $12 for the good. We know that from research. So, what is the best mechanism to find solutions to environmental problems in a cost-effective manner? I'm just going to warn you, I'm going to make some people mad. I believe steadfastly that you insert the profit motive. Okay, don't throw tomatoes, but profit is good. Because the profit motive compels people to innovate around a problem. It allows people who don't care about trees or bunnies or birds. I know everybody cares about birds, so just say trees and bunnies. It allows people who don't care about your problem to actually invest in the solution. Now, what that does is it allows us to scale quickly. It allows us to attract capital so that we can grow good ideas. Now, the nonprofit mechanism, many of us are used to working in a nonprofit mechanism. And who works for an entity that is nonprofit or not-for-profit? Okay, nearly all the hands went up. Okay, well, nonprofits have to be stewards of funds. They have to act very responsibly and have to be very conservative. They can't take risk because they have public or community money. So for-profit enterprises have the benefit of attracting capital, and they can take greater risks. So here's the big one. That's why it's in yellow. I proffer that we need to start thinking a lot more about environmental enterprise and leveraging natural assets for the sake of profit. Why? Because profits are valued in our capitalistic system. And like it or not, we live in a capitalistic system. And things, unfortunately, aren't appreciated for their inherent value by everybody, because not everybody can understand their inherent value. But everybody speaks the same language when it comes to money. Now, I don't like that. I'm not saying that's what I like about the way that things are, but that's the way things are. We've tried communism. That didn't work too well. And so what I proffer is that we can leverage the power of capitalism to achieve our goals. We can co-opt capitalism to solve environmental problems. I want to take you through my problem-solving process. Any problem I have, almost, a business problem, an environmental problem, any problem, I handle very much the same way. And again, I'm sorry, I'll try to walk you through this. I was hoping this would show up better. Perhaps you can read it, but if not, the first thing I ask is, what's the problem? What is the need? What's out there? It could be an environmental problem, could be a business problem, whatever. What's the problem? Then I say, who has the problem? Okay, who has the problem is the market. That's the market. How do they deal with the problem is what we're competing against. Okay? So think about, back this out, and think about your own things that you want to solve, your own problems, and put them in this framework. So we have our competition, and then how is your solution superior? How is what we're going to do superior to what everybody else is doing? That's your value proposition. Value is what consumers can actually appreciate. Sometimes value comes in the form of cost. Sometimes it comes in a luxury. Whatever it is, you have to have a value proposition. And whoever is going to be willing to pay for that value is your customer. So, in the context of tourism in the Anthropocene, I'm not sure if my talk jives with yours or not. We can talk about it later, but I mean, it's cool. We're academics. So looking at Costa Rica, they had a choice to make in the 1970s. Does the economy go to agriculture, logging, large-scale fisheries, or should they further develop their tourism industry? And this is the way they went approach this problem. So who has the problem? And, when they were looking as to whether or not tourism would be the way to go. Who has the problem? Well, the problem is people want a vacation. Who has the problem? Well, everybody needs a vacation. Where are they going to fulfill that? Well, Bahamas, Gulf of Mexico, Belize, wherever. There's a number of places they could have been going. So what's the value proposition? What did they have that was superior? What did they leverage? What did they feel like they had? And then who would appreciate that? What they had here was an environment, a pristine environment. And they went out and they found and developed and cultivated a market that was the nature traveler, the eco-tourist. This happened in the 70s. At that time, Costa Rica was like almost every other developing country. But now they have about 60% of their land in private and federal reserves. They have a very good standard of living, good infrastructure, lowest carbon footprint of almost any any country on the planet. Their ecotourism industry is a model for the world. The president who implemented the policy, which was peace with nature, was the policy, won a Nobel Prize for it. And so what they had to do to overcome this, right, to overcome the competition, and there are always people invested. Whatever the problem is and whatever your challenge is, there are people invested in the problem. I guarantee you that. But they had people that were invested in the alternatives. Stands to reason. Bahamas does too. How they got over that hump was subsidy. That's the opposite of taxation. Before I talked about we have a bad thing, we tax it. When we have something that could be good, we subsidize it. That, to me, offers an opportunity, in my estimation, something that I think the Bahamas has here. I think that now is the time to exploit the power of taxation, profit motive, and subsidy to grow ecotourism in the Bahamas. And it goes back to another economic principle. and that is supply and demand. There's an increase in demand for high-quality ecotourism. There's a need for places that people can go to unplug. There's a need for places where they can exist in a pristine environment, even if it's just for a short time. There's a need for people to reconnect with nature. That need is growing. Because why? Because the places that that could offer that are shrinking. The Bahamas still has that. The Bahamas still has that pristine element, areas that are untouched. I walked across, 15 years ago, I backpacked across the entire berth of Andros Island. It took me 10 days to go all the way all the way west and up and down. I didn't see another human being. All I saw were turkey vultures waiting for me to die. But it's still out there. Now, if we overutilize that, and we don't permit it, then it won't be pristine anymore. So we have to balance that. But this opportunity exists because there are so few places like it anymore. So I offer, and I believe that we have a lot of opportunities here to develop in this way, but I think it's going to take the right mix of taxation, right mix of subsidy, and the right mix of investment. But I'm hopeful that this represents an opportunity for the Bahamas as a whole. So I hope, I know that this isn't very academic-y. I am an academic. I do lots and lots of research, but to me, I was like, I'll do something cool. So not that your academic stuff is not cool. I love it all. But this, to me, is something that needs to be in the conversation. And incidentally, I understand that some of this is controversial, but I don't mind that at all. So thank you. I'm at 17 minutes. Do I have time for questions? I can do one. Oh, maybe two short ones.